goods. Good on your desk, good on your shelves, good on the ground, good wherever the heck it is you want. And really, folks, that's it. That's all there is to this. Thank you all for joining me. My name is the Mighty Borlog, and I welcome you to the first of a series of videos I intend to use to teach you how to mod for Staxel. We're going to start everybody out slow and steady, and we're going to work on a single tile object to put inside Staxel. Now, before we can start slinging voxels, we need to get you a pair of programs, and the first one I want you to download tonight is MagicaVoxel. MagicaVoxel is available for free and is one of the two main voxel editing programs that we use. The other one is Cubicle. Cubicle, as current, does require a $30 purchase, and you can get it on Steam, and you can get just the version that's going to work for Staxel purposes for that amount. You can get bigger and badder and more feature-rich versions for more money, but since we're just starting out, it works to start out with something 100% free. I enjoy using MagicaVoxel. I use it for 90% of my mods, and even when I have to use something in Cubicle, I've usually designed it in MagicaVoxel first. So go ahead and download this off of the link at GitHub, and then download the program Notepad++. Now, you don't really have to use this one because Notepad in Windows is adequate to the task, but only just so. Notepad++ has some really nice bells and whistles, including different colored text and the ability to format the tile file correctly so that it looks right when you're editing it. It's just a win-win. I've had no regrets using Notepad++. Please consider using that program. And once you have those two programs downloaded and installed on your computer, go ahead and meet me in MagicaVoxel. Alright, welcome to the MagicaVoxel interface. Now, as you saw from the download link there at the GitHub for MagicaVoxel, you have the option of attending a tutorial that he has prepared for his program. I highly recommend it. I'm going to very quickly try to go through all the basics of what we're modding, why we're modding it, and try to confuse you as little as possible. So first things first, what we have here is a 16 voxel cubed area. I'm just going to go ahead and tell this thing to make the grid space 16 as it's supposed to, so we can stop confusing you there. What I have here is just a little ceramic pot that I made as one of my first objects, and it's a bit rough around the edges, looks kind of dorky, but it fits within the 1 cube or 16 cubed region, which is one full tile. And we're doing it small to start out to avoid confusing you, because once we go outside this bounding box, things get quite a bit more interesting. So first of all, as you can see, I've built the object out of concentric circles, fairly easy enough to do. You can do that by attaching blocks, however it is that you require to get the shapes that you need. It's really simple. It's basically like Legos, and it's actually quite a bit of fun. So here I have a basic square tool that'll let me create whatever it is that I need for whatever size that I require. And I'm just going to quick pull that out. So that's one of the brushes up here for the box mode. The other mode that I'll use a lot is face mode. Face mode is nice because you can use it to extrude things, and that depends upon what controls you have set here. You can tell it to select for color or geometry. I'm going to go ahead and tell it color, and you can tell it to use whatever color you have selected, which is palette, or you can use the raw surface color as a continuation. I usually have it set for surface, and I can just grab this, and I can just make whatever I require pop up and pop out based exclusively by what color I happen to be selecting. All of these commands also have the ability to erase. They have the ability to delete voxels as well. I just kind of rip these guys out of here. Real simple, real easy. And the rest, the voxel mode, the pattern mode, the center mode, I don't use those much. The last one that I will use fairly frequently is line. And line finally has a couple of really neat little extra bits. So obviously you want to be in attach mode. You can do single straight pieces, you can do pieces that are straight across your viewpoint, but now, and this is what's really cool, you can tell it to project, which means now I will draw a line more or less straight through from point to point. And I promise you that is a very, very useful update that this program has received. I'm very happy for it. The other thing that it does is it'll also select voxels, which is huge. This is another recent addition, and you can shift select to add pieces. You can do it as a box, you can do it as a rectangle, and then you can grab whatever it is that you have selected, and let's do a clean selection here. Then you can just grab it and you can click on a face and just move it. You don't have to delete and redraw, which is what we used to have to do just one update ago, and that is so huge. And really all we're doing right now is just sitting here playing around with this stuff, but the thing that I would teach you to build today is basically done. From this point forward, I'm going to try and talk about what Staxel is looking for, and I'll do my level best to be brief. This is a three-dimensional object in 3D space. Those of you who have done some drafting, those of you who have done your own 3D animation, you are aware of this space, and you're aware of the coordinate system. Now, as current, the green bar is your y-axis, the red bar is your x-axis, and the z-axis will be your blue bar. For myself and everyone who cut their teeth modeling in 3D space, y is up. Z is up, sorry. Z is up because that's just how we learned. I learned back on the old 3.1 interface, and I learned further on Maya, so naturally between 3DS and Maya, I've always thought of Z as being up. The rest of you will think that Y is up, and you are correct, because Staxel is looking for Y to be up, and you notice we don't have that set here. We also do not have a way to change it in MagicaVoxel. In Cubicle, you do. So right from the start, using MagicaVoxel means Staxel is going to be looking for this object to come in and will automatically say, okay, switch the Y and the Z coordinates as just a basic workaround for us MagicaVoxel users. That'll come in handy later. Just be aware, okay, yeah, that blue bar is sticking up, the green bar is protruding to the rear, and be aware of those when we start doing more complex pieces. Now, I mentioned the tile. I mentioned the tile space. Staxel's looking for these 16 cubed regions. Now, there is nothing stopping you from building outside of them. If you watched my video on macro builds, you'll see an example of how I have built well outside of a single tile space. So all of these little squares inside here we call subvoxels. And 16 subvoxels square on a side is a tile. And each tile, for the game's purpose, will be this 16 cube region. So when you start going bigger, everything is going to have to be divisible by 16. And every time you calculate the size of your model, it will be in terms of how many tiles are being filled. Even if it is filled with one voxel, it still counts and it must be described. As luck would have it, I'm not going to make you guys do that today. We're just going to stick to one, which will simplify that. Last but not least, there is a known flaw exclusively in MagicaVoxel called the X-flip. And all the X-flip is this little red bar down here is your X-axis. For whatever reason, exporting out of MagicaVoxel to Cubicle to Staxel to anything, apparently. I've heard of 3 other programs that have accepted MagicaVoxel.vox files. For some reason, the program on export flips the X-axis. So actually, it's funny, we have a tool in here that does the same thing. I hit the button, nothing really happens because this is a 100% mirror. It's supposed to look the same from all directions, so really nothing has transpired. But let me just go ahead and just mess with this a bit real quick. Say we had this pink part for some reason. In order for that pink part to show up on the right spot in the game and look correct, we have to flip the X axis. Because when we export this now, Staxel is going to see a VOX that actually looks like this. And these are the only two known limitations with using MagicaVoxel as current. The YZ up problem and the X flip. Being aware of these two gives us the ability to go out there and account for it, since they haven't been patched yet. And in the case of the YZ up problem, that's just, normally your program would let you change that. There's no real reason to get excited about it since Staxel knows, and Staxel will handle the processing for you as long as you declare it, which I will discuss later. So let's just imagine to ourselves, heaven help us, we are done and we have no real reason to do any more editing to the model itself. We can now sit down and export this file. Now you're looking over the interface, there's quite a few buttons in here. Again, please attend the regular, ordinary tutorial that he put together. That's how I learned. I guarantee you'll figure it out in a couple of tries. For our particular uses, I want you to look down here where my cursor is. There's an export bar. You expand it and you see all the different kinds of files we can export this thing for. Vox is the native file format that MagicaVoxel is looking for. QB is exporting to a QB volume file. So you just go ahead and click that sucker. Now recall, we've already flipped this object along the x-axis, so it will look correct when it gets into our video game. Once that's all been done, you simply click one button. I'm going to go ahead and put this in a special folder so I can get it back. I'm going to call it LawsPod06. It's already done as a cubicle binary, and boom, we're done. That is all you really have to do for exporting. First, complete your file, then flip it along the x-axis, then go down to the export and click the QB button. And that's all that there is to it for exporting out of MagicaVoxel into Staxel. Now, to get Staxel to recognize the object, we have to create a tile file for it, which I'm going to teach you how to do next. Alright, now we're at the somewhat confusing but entirely straightforward part of the process. I'm going to teach you, using a method designed by Scorned by the Nine, to import your object into Staxel by duplicating and then modifying a tile file. So how do we go about this? Like any other difficult process, you go a step at a time. And the first thing I instruct you to do is to jump into your navigator and navigate to your app data folder, then go to local, then find the Staxel launcher folder, then game data, and then content. Once you're in the content folder, you're seeing what I'm looking at here, an assortment of files that do important things that I'm not going to teach you anything about, and then the folder mods and the folder Staxel. So in my particular case, I already happen to have a folder here open to mods that I was browsing through briefly, and I've got a couple of folders here. I recommend when you make mods for Staxel, you should create a folder of a kind having to do with the mod family you're putting in. If you're just putting a bunch of one-offs, you can just create a junk folder. It doesn't really necessarily matter. You just need to have a place for it. So in my case, I go ahead and jump into Stream Objects, and I'm ready to go. This is all the stuff that I've built for the stream, objects that are in the game right now, that you have seen in some of my videos already, including some that I have yet to show off. So since we're here, I'm going to go ahead and grab out of my Stream Objects export folder, which is where I had put the QB file ahead of time, and I'm going to get LawsPod out of here. I like to keep a record of everything, so I'm actually copying and pasting as opposed to dragging and dropping because I don't want to lose that. going to tell it to refresh. And LOZ is actually at the top anyway, so good for us. The cubicle file is now in there. Without a tile file, the game and the content builder will ignore this file as being present in any of the game file directories, so we've got to give it a tile file. Now I have some here that I've already made, and I can just spawn my own for whatever it is that I happen to need given what I've done in the past. You guys at home, I'm going to help you out. I have this second window open here, and I'm going to direct you to where you've got to go. So for this particular purpose, I told you we're making a one tile object, which means we can skip some bits of the code, but I do want to show you kind of what you're looking for when you're copying these tile files out. So I jump into Staxel. I scroll all the way down here to tile objects. I scroll down further to the server village, excuse me. And right here is a full selection of darn near every kind of tile file you're going to end up using. Almost every last one of them. There are some obscure and nuanced ones that are probably going to be built as we get more updates. And as we poke around on that stuff, between myself and Demon Hunter or G-Dog, we will find the rest of this stuff and we'll kind of tell you what's going on as much as we can understand. For your purposes, I recommend you go ahead and you grab this fence corner tile file. Now, I've already told my system to recognize tile files and send them in a Notepad++, which I have open right now already. So I've got this fence corner sitting here. And I've got it as a reference. I'm not going to make any changes to it. I'm just going to go ahead and copy it. I've copied the tile file. Navigate back to my Stream Objects folder. There's my laws pot. I'm just going to paste this in real quick. And I'm going to do a little bit of Windows magic here. I'm just going to make sure they're the same name. And now I'm going to open it up over here. So just starting out, we have duplicated a tile file. We renamed the file to be the same name as a cubicle because it just looks nicer this way where they're all lined up like that. And now we're going to go through the bits and pieces and change what we need to make this tile file work for our object. So first and foremost, here's the inheritance argument. All this does is tell Staxel, okay, this is the kind of object it is, and for our purposes, we just need a base tile object. We just need something that recognizes the tile grid system inside the world and behaves like an object bound to that system, or, as we'll showcase, bound to that system in a way anticipating the height of the things you might set it on top of or around. Now, the next piece here is the code piece. And this is fairly simple. As you can see, we got staxel.tileobject.servervillage.fencecorner. This is telling the game, that our object is of a certain kind and has a name. So in our case, we're just going to go ahead and paste this in because we sure as sugar put that in there. Now the rest of this, you notice, hey, this looks an awful lot like the file directory for the object that we're using. If we just change it to look at the correct file directory for our object, everything will be fine. Looking over here, you can see that instead of going to Staxel, we had gone to mods. So we just start by telling it, hey, you look in mods first. And since this is the code argument, we use dots here, or excuse me, periods. Let me use that correctly. And I want you to look into stream objects. And of course, spelling, punctuation, all of that stuff, you gotta nail it. Uppercase, lowercase, it's looking for all of it. So you go ahead and make sure that works out. And in the bottom part, roughly the same thing. Now you notice I got a dot here, but the rest of these are slashes. Make sure those slashes are in there. This is the voxel argument. And it's telling you, okay, here's the name of what you're looking for, and here's the data. Here's the raw file itself. So I'm going to go ahead and tell it to be lawspot. And then I'm going to tell it mods. I guess that's a / stream objects. And as you can see, the program, this is why I love ++ and simultaneously hate it, it's trying to help you by anticipating what you're going to put in, and just make sure that that is identical to that if you've used it anywhere else before. Now, the representative tile argument I don't use. So Staxel object server village fence straight, doesn't quite sound like something that we'll be needing, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that out. We now have step sound group, and we're currently telling it to, when the player steps on top of it, make a wood sound. Obviously for a terracotta jar, it's not going to make that sound, but I don't have an annotated list ahead of me, so we'll just leave this be because it's not hurting anything. Now here's the first one that's going to cause you to pay attention. This is randomized position. Randomized position tells the object, okay, when you are set down in the world, pick a random number between 1 and I think 3, and add that to X or Y, and then pick another number between 1 and 3 and add that to the coordinate system you did not use in the first argument, or some such thing. This means every time you set it down, it's going to pick a little random position to set on. So it looks more organic when you set the object down, and for our particular uses, I absolutely want that to be a thing. So I just tell it true. So that way every time you set it down, it's going to look a little bit different. Now it doesn't do anything to the rotation, it's just handling its position. Now searchable as being false is only if you want to prevent the player from ever being able to search the object up in the honeycomb store. I say next to that, that's silly talk. I want you to be able to find my stuff because I want you to be able to purchase it, use it, and enjoy it. So I take that out. Now we go straight to the compound argument ordinarily, but here's something I'm going to teach you. Inside of here there is something called, I'm going to make absolutely certain that I get this right. It is called attach to below. And when it comes to this one, attach to below, unless I'm mistaken, is automatically false unless you tell it true. Now for our purposes, I want you to be able to set this on a desk, which is going to have its height set to a correct tile height, so it's going to be 16, 32, 48, and so forth. In this case, I want that to be true because now what will happen is, say you want to set it on the ground, and you know the ground can be different between the soil, the grass, and the tiles that we have indoors. Go ahead and make that true. That way it should sit down on top of whatever base surface is below it, so it'll look right. I'm going to leave that in there, and I'm going to double verify that I've got that correct. If I need to make a correction at the end, please pay attention to that. Now the next portion is the compound argument. Now this is important. We have an object that is 1 by 1 by 1. All of the coordinates are 1. You have the option of taking the entire compound argument and just deleting it, because this is a one-tile object, and Staxel recognizes all one-tile objects as essentially being an object that has a transform and no other data. It'll just do that automatically for you. I want you to do it this way because you are darn certainly going to use the compound argument for every other object that is any greater than one tile. So this is merely a make sure you do it right because teacher's watching sort of situation. And when we get into more complex compound situations, I will happily go through those and explain to you what's going on, as well as teaching you how MagicaVoxel counts when it exports for collision, which is what compound defines. Now, the next thing we have is categories, and categories is very simple. For the one that we had beforehand, it was a fence. It was also a miscellaneous object. It was a picket object. It was also described as white. So for those fence pieces, those are all descriptors that you would use to search the object up and find it. Now what's great about this is that really you just put whatever it is you need here. So I have a blue pot. That is also a jar. That is also white. And if you use any of those 4 terms to search up my object in the honeycomb store, you're going to find it. Now the next part of this that you absolutely have to pay attention on is the pricing argument. All objects in Staxel that the player can use need to have some kind of pricing unless they are a tool or some other third object that has either not yet been invented and put into the code, or is some sort of special object the game is looking for to, I don't know, build terrain out of. I know we don't have to have pricing for all of the terrain blocks, just any of the terrain blocks we could have in our hand. So, pretty crucial thing. And all I'm going to do is tell it, you know what, this jar isn't worth all that dang much, so I'll make it 25. And next is, as you might imagine, we're just going to go ahead and save this guy out. And now we need to do the fun bit. I have just created a tile file referencing the object that we made in the correct folder, named the correct way, and the two of those are supposed to work together. But if you notice, all the rest of these have three. I've got plate path straight QB, which is the physical object. I have the plate path straight tile file, and then I have plate path straight .tile.cache. We can't make that. That's what we need the content builder for. And at this point in time, we're going to go ahead and work the content builder to tell Staxel, here's the object, here's the object's data. Now create a cache so that we can play with this in the game. And all we have to do is click this Validate Resources button, which I will do right now. And there it is. You know that your object has been correctly imported into Staxel when the Validate Resources button is pressed, the green crawler goes and goes and goes, and it does not give you an error. Bit of a clencher, but you just kind of you have to wait for it to fail or succeed and not tell you that it got the job done. So since that's the case, we look over here, and now I've got my LOZ pot 6 as a QB, as a tile, and as a cache, meaning all three pieces are present to make this work in Staxel. So, let's go ahead and bop on into Staxel, and we'll take a look at what it looks like. Back on the farm again, we've had another update, so we have a new cat name, and got the place more or less back to where it had been when I started. But now we're going to have a little bit of extra fun here. So, of course, the mods that we have here, these single tile objects, you can see how they can be joined together to make one larger object. You can also see how you can violate the one tile size in creative ways and build stuff up. But of course, this is all advanced work. And this here is just thinking of each piece you create as a part of a greater whole. But just to get you started, just to get you having fun, we really just need something simple. And what I'm going to do here is briefly drop in a creative mode. And I'm going to go search up our pot. And there it is. Now, this data over here is located somewhere in the system. I believe it might be in the cache. I will explore that possibility and help demonstrate that. It's also possible you can add this data in during the part where you are importing. As currently, I don't know how to make that change, but when I do find out, I'll get it to you. But right now, as you can see, with the work that we did, the effort we went to, we can have this pot in the game, and look at it. I mean, maybe not the greatest thing I've ever designed. Obviously, this is the first, you know, this is baby's first Staxel mod, but as you can plainly see, we're doing a pretty good job of getting the thing to sit where it's got to, unless, of course, it's trying to occupy a space it's not supposed to be. Obviously, it's not going to float into the air, given what we told it to do. And we're also trying to convince it to sit on top of things. And not every object itself actually ends up working, but you notice it sits real good on that tile there. Which means we pop out here, let's find a space that's uneven. It should sit just fine here on the grass. And it does. It'll also sit just fine on this grass. So we'll put one here, and put one here. By telling it to attach to below, it's looking for the height below it, and it's setting correctly on it, which means good on your desk, good on your shelves, good on the ground, good wherever the heck it is you want. And really, folks, that's it. That's all there is to this. I know it looks daunting. I know it looks kind of difficult to wrap your head around, but as you noticed, it's just copying and pasting. Once Scorn by the 9 showed me how to do this, my head exploded. I started creating stuff all over the place, and admittedly, as you can see, had to do a lot of my own teaching on the way. I'm hoping that this little jump start, this little inoculation in your bum, is going to get you excited about what's possible, because if you can do something this small, this simple, in so short a time as, obviously I'm explaining it to you so it took us 30 minutes today, but on your own, with your own creativity, with a free program, we're going to blow this thing up. Staxel is going to be a beautiful, exciting game all on its own, but with our contributions, it's going to be absolutely astounding. Because you think about how bad I am at this. Imagine how good some of you are going to be. And all you needed was somebody to show you at least one way of how to do it. And I'm not going to stop here. We're going to do bigger objects. Objects that fit together. Objects that are macro pieces. We're going to get all of that done together, and we're going to have an absolute blast. You stay tuned. Thank you for watching, and keep your eye on Staxel. It's going to be amazing.